Ta-da! And good afternoon. And we are here. And we are live. And it's the Daily Show. And it's midday. And it's not the Daily Show. It's the Midday Show. Can we start? Hello and welcome to the Midday Show. Just after midday. And welcome to the Midday Show. Let's do some hellos. Let's hello to some people. Let's have some chit-chat. Let's see who we've got online. Tuned in. You could be watching on Facebook. You could be watching on LinkedIn. You could be watching on Twitter or X as it is now. You could be watching in the espresso bar. I don't know where you're watching. So let's just say a big hello and how you doing. I've got something quite interesting to do on the show today for you. I'm going to review another book and it's going to get quite deep and then balanced out with a lot of light relief at the end. Trust me on that one. So hello, good afternoon. So let's be having your comments then. Let's be seeing who we've got on. Don't be shy, come and say hi and I'll give you a shout out straight away because it'd be nice to see you. Today I thought we'd just want to wait till the numbers go up a little bit before we get into the meat of the show. So let's just establish first of all who we've got listening, or watching. So if you're watching or listening at the moment, let's have a quick hello from you. Graham Pack says it's not streaming on YouTube. I can't explain that, Graham. I don't know. There's been a bit of a transition at the moment between shows, as Russ explained in detail on Monday. So I guess there'd be a few teething troubles and teething changeovers, teething troubles, all that sort of thing. Hello, Jeff. Watching from Thailand on a cruise. Waiting to go on stage in a while. Oh, you're the comedian, aren't you, Jeff? Fantastic. Good luck. Good luck. What time is it in Thailand? Because when I was on the cruise, they would have shows before midnight was the family ones. It had to be, let's just say PG. But then after midnight, it was all bets are off and it went X-rated and, in my opinion, very, very funny. So good luck with that, Jeff. Good luck with that. Must be really fun working on the cruise ship. It's not something I've ever done actually, but it does seem terribly good fun. Although I suppose if you work there, you can't use the rest of the ship with the guests. Staff quarters only. So I just want to do a few more shout outs. I'm going to be reviewing this book today, Recapture the Rapture. Now, don't be put off by the title. Honestly, don't be put off by the title, because normally I would run 50 miles from a book that said things like that. Just after 7, Seaborn here so clean. What do you mean? Sea? Oh, I see. You're on the sea at the moment, so I don't fully understand that. So just after 7 o'clock. Or is Seaborn the name of the boat you're going to have to a simple sentence and I understand none of it. I don't know if you mean the sea is clean or you're doing a 7 o'clock show and that's really clean on a ship called Seaborn. I'm making myself look really silly here. There you go. Oh, Graham. Tasteful as always. The morgue is often busy on cruise ships. No, I tell you what was busy. I twisted my ankle because I fell over a root on a beach, and I went to the onboard hospital, and it was private. And they were going to charge me 85 quid to find out what I already knew. It'll take a few weeks to heal, so I didn't pay. Staff quarters. This old comic doesn't do staff quarters. Terror. I have to work clean. Do you know now? I'm absolutely thoroughly confused. But Jeff, good luck with the show, man. Good luck. I think we've established that you're doing comedy on a cruise ship somewhere in Thailand, and we wish you well with that. So we got Graham and we got Jeff. Anybody else wants to chip in and say hello? So I want to review this book today and see what you think about it. Now, it's got quite a controversial title, Recapture the Rapture, and even that word would freak me out a bit before. Rethinking God, sex, and death in a world that's lost its mind. And basically, I would normally not have gone close to a book like that. And then I started reading, and then it got interesting. Paul, my auntie's funeral's today. Paul, I hope that goes as well as it can, my friend. So I can't stay on here too long. And Dr. Asa Don Brown, good day, Neil. I'm listening to your show as I'm traveling to Albany, New York this morning. Now, I'd love your opinion on this because you're a professional, Dr. Asa. So I'd love to know what you think about this. So it talks, first of all, this book, about rapture ideology. And I'd come across this in Christianity before, basically the rapture. But what he's expanded well, basically, Jesus comes back and very few are saved, and the rest of us are kind of stuffed, which is on one end of it maybe a little unbelievable, and on the other end of that, if you do believe it, pretty scary. It seems to be very fear-based. Greetings all. I go to the Bowls Club and the Garden Centre in the rain. I can hardly contain myself. Julie, you've got to watch this lifestyle. It will catch up with you. And Elizabeth Green, Dr. Asa Don Brown, keep traveling to New York, please. There we go. You're getting the love. So see what you think about this. But then the author has expanded the idea of rapture. Okay. And he says it's not just in religions. It's not just in Christianity. It's everywhere. And the basic psychology, which we need to understand, of people that believe this kind of thing, it's kind of it's a 4 key beliefs that are shared. Number one, the world that we know it as is broken and unsavable. Number 2, there's a point in the near future where everything's going to change. Sound familiar? On the other side of that inflection point, everything we value will be saved or redeemed. So let's get there as fast as possible without much concern for the world we're leaving behind. Which puts the responsibility, whether that's in science or in religion or anywhere, on something outside of us, if you like. In other words, there's nothing that we could do. We can be one of the lucky ones that escapes and hope to God that we've got the golden ticket, because most people won't. So there's a lot of scrabbling for the golden ticket. Let's look at it this way. You could call this one a techno-utopian rapture, where technology solves all our problems. The world as we know is doomed, not this time because of sin, as religion would tell you, but because of overconsumption. An inflection point coming soon, an ecosystemic collapse. On the other side are people who will be looked after for the best and brightest. They'll go to Mars and have a colony up there. So let's prepare for that eventuality as fast as possible, and never mind the collateral damage, like building space stations and luxury bunkers, rather than solving for global crises like food and water and energy or climate. And when you put it that way, it suddenly, this whole rapture thing starts to get a few holes in it, doesn't it? Wouldn't it be better to solve the problems at source rather than taking leaps into space, so to speak? And you can begin to see how it is everywhere, not just in religion. This kind of rapture psychology, in other words, the very few are going to get the golden ticket and the rest of us kind of have to scrabble. It's kind of everywhere. And then the author goes into much more detail, and this is where it gets interesting, and it will have a connection to mental health, which is a lot of what the show is about. So the author, Jamie Wheel, he had flown to Johannesburg to give a talk at a summit dedicated to future-proofing Africa. Okay. And I'm going to read a bit for you now. And I sat in the audience listening to speakers describe the plight of the continent, its challenges and opportunities. And he says he felt inspired and confused, inspired by the inventiveness of programs to bring solar and wind power to crowded townships. That's good. Or ways to use nanotechnology to make drinking water out of clouds and seawater, but also confused. What did that have, what would these people need to do with robots. How was it? And then there was another guy talking about reversing aging and the technology behind that. But what would these people really be thinking about that? If you think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, these people are basically, the very bottom one is just general survival, where a lot of people are. Okay. And then the very top of the pyramid is transcendence, if you like, spirituality, transcendence, and the best of it, the rest of it, the meaty middle, is where most of us kind of live. And he's just saying, well, it's either the top or the bottom, he's saying. At the top, you've got things like exponential education, virtual learning that could reach kids anywhere with a Wi-Fi connection, exponential biology, gene editing tools to splice DNA and accelerate evolution. Well, it's great for the people at the top, but you're not going to be really worried about whether you can splice a gene to live 10 years longer if you're at the bottom of that pyramid and worried about survival. But then even if you were in that exciting top or heading towards that way, something's missing, so says the author. Meaning. What does it all mean? You could say, he makes the point, some things are definitely on the up. Literacy and nutrition are up. War and disease are down. All signs point to an underreported but undeniable upward arc to human progress. Things are getting exponentially better, so it would seem. Hold on. If we have knowledge to evolve Mars to be more like Earth, then surely there's more knowledge to make Earth more like Earth. Exactly, Dave. Exactly. You've kind of, in the best way, stolen my thunder, because I'm coming on to that, but you're absolutely right. But then after you get home reading about all these exciting things that we can do with nanotechnology and that, you scroll your news feed, or doom scrolling, as it's sometimes called, and you see fires in the Arctic, the Amazon, Malibu, pandemics, refugees, Ebola, COVID, populism, terrorism, sexism, racism, all the isms, all the time. And he charts an interesting graph. If you can imagine, we got staying alive, which goes top down, and then there's coming alive, which goes top up. So let's start here, staying alive and coming alive. All right. And we're at that inflection point in the middle at the moment. So he says, bear with me here. So staying alive is not a lot of fun. Okay. It starts high up on the left and plummets downwards as it moves across the graph. I'm mindful because you're seeing it backwards, aren't you? But anyway, bear with me on that. If life were a picnic at the beach, according to him, this curve would include noticing the water getting sucked out to sea, watching the animals flee to higher ground, and then maybe checking your phone, which is blaring, to see the tsunami warning. Coming alive, however, is timeless, optimistic, and focused on maximizing choices, savoring the world. Staying alive is time-bound, pessimistic, and dwindling choices. And coming alive is timeless, optimistic, and focused on maximizing choices. That would seem better, surely. And that can make it kind of hard to plan our days. If you think the world is getting really better and getting really worse at the same time. So if we have to avoid annihilation, but everything's really good as well in other ways, it kind of makes it hard to plan your days, if that makes sense. Is anyone relating to any of this so far? Because I really did. Basically, he's coming around to say the old ways aren't working. All right. And he talks about, the bankers of Wall Street, all the crashes and all that sort of things. Even medicine, which was, the next holy grail that's going to help us live forever. But then there's people addicted to prescription medicine. So it seems quite it's not. We've put our faith in one thing after another. Hello, Barry. Thanks for joining us. And nothing seems to have worked. And in some ways, it seems to be getting better. And in some ways, it seems to be getting considerably worse. And we're at that kind of intersection point between a happy ever after, forever after, or something not so good. And we're all understandably a little bit confused. Like he says, quite pithily, it's quite hard to plan your days. Then he talks about religion and the decline in people around the world practicing any kind of religious faith. He says Catholicism has seen a nominal growth in developing countries. The rest of us, if we have any faith at all, we're kind of saying, well, yeah, I'm kind of spiritual but not religious. Now, this has seen a rise. This has now created another dichotomy, because we've seen a rise in these so-called think American mega churches preaching the gospel of wealth, all this poverty and penance and smells and bells and smells. You know, that's all out the window. Now it's wealth, prosperity, and all these, but with some very strict doctrine behind it. Okay, and some people can't quite go for all of that. I don't mind the wealth and prosperity bit, but the strict doctrine behind it, you know, I can't personally go for that. I find that too much like a straitjacket. I find that very, very difficult personally, and it's a lot of kind of, in my opinion, cutting the person to fit the cloth, if you know what I mean on that, because people are different. We're all very different. But the other polarity of that, people go, well, I can't go for that. Nothing I put my faith in is working. I don't want that. So what's the other way? The other way is nihilism, and this isn't particularly good either. Let's read you this bit. People that don't go into that kind of gospel of wealth, I say Christianity, could be any religion, can go into nihilism. This is why we have diseases of despair. Any of these sound familiar? Anxiety, depression, suicide. We've talked about a lot of that on this show. They're rampant. 1 in 6 Americans, I'm not sure what the UK stats are, take psychiatric medications just to cope with the banality of modern life. The World Health Organization reports that more people today kill themselves than die from all wars and natural disasters combined. I'll just let that sink in. More people today kill themselves than die from all wars and natural disasters combined. Wow. So organized religion didn't do it for us. Modernism didn't do it for us. So what to do? Well, let's move on to the next bit of the book. I've gone through making little marks in this, so I'm doing all of this myself. So bear with me. Bear with. It's quite a long read, right? So 1.0 version didn't work. Religion, science 2.0. You know, left us without meaning. That figure sounds unbelievable, doesn't it? But I've no reason to doubt this author. But if that's true, it's pretty scary, don't you think? It's the psychology of wipe away the failures and start again. It's the same psychological mindset that led pilgrims to leave Europe and set out for a new world. Yeah, because people have always tried again, wipe the slate clean. And that's a lovely idea, you know. But he comes on to, I'm going to put this on the screen, Meaning 3.0, what to do about it. And it comes down to this: catharsis, ecstasis, communitas. All right. Now it gets interesting. So let's start with inspiration. That's ecstasis, inspiration. Now, before, this could only be found, you could say, in a church or some kind of organized spirituality or religion, but you can find it in breath. You can find it in meditation. Yes, in prayer and religion, but not just that. In music and dance, and he says here in psychedelics, I'm only quoting the author. There's research on that. I'm not qualified to comment on that. And sexuality. Okay. Communitas, it's things like a community, romantic, family, local, even virtual, like we're doing now. This is a kind of community that we get together. And catharsis, healing. Something happens in life, a bankruptcy, a divorce, that first there's despair and then there's healing from that. That's a kind of catharsis. Now, And he's put it in a really, really good way. Catharsis without the cringe of indulgent self-help. Ecstasy or ecstasis without the craving to or addiction to altered states, or drug addiction, if you like. And communities without cult of unreliable leaders and followers. Now think about that. Think about that. What if there was a way? There was a way. And this way would give us all a better shot. You could argue something really pithy. Finally, we found something to believe in ourselves. But this is the case he's making. Oh, I must sound crazy talking about this. When I really stop and think about what I'm talking about here and talking about subjects like this, sometimes I think I sound crazy. So if you do, I'll forgive you. I don't mind. But maybe for you, as there was for me, there's a ring of truth in at least some of the things he's saying here. And I haven't mastered this. I'm nowhere even close. So let's be absolutely clear about that. But ecstasy or joy without addiction, okay? Catharsis or healing without the cringe, self-help or shelf-help, because most of us don't read it. Or community without cult, without rules, unreliable leaders and followers. Possible? And then he goes on and he starts talking about some very simple everyday ways. In fact, one of these we've all been doing together since the start of the show. Any guesses what it might be? Stick an answer in the comments if you do. One of these things he's talking about where we can access, this is about accessing different states without addiction. We've all been doing it. This is just learning about what we do anyway and doing it in such a way to benefit us rather than doing it, I suppose, unconsciously or without knowing what we're doing. It's about doing what we do and knowing what we're doing rather than just guessing. Any guesses in the chat window what it might be? Any guesses at all? Everything he said has boiled down to connectivity. I know. You see, have you read this, Dave? I thought this would butter your parsnips because, yes, very much so, my friend. It does come down to connectivity. That's the community part of it. And I notice there's very much in the community that you're building, Dave, and the circles you hang in. We've talked about this on the show before, haven't we? And there's no cult to it. It's a mature community. It's not like leaders and brainwashed followers, if you like. It's community, the best definition of. But any guesses what one of these natural ways might be? Any guesses at all? Any clue? Something that we've been doing since the show started for the last 23 minutes and 26 seconds now. We've been doing it. Any idea what it might be? Stick a yes in the chat window if you know. During my doctorate, says Dr. Asa Don Brown, I researched the effects of childhood trauma on adult perception and worldview. It was a 3 quantitative study. Would you explain what you mean by quantitative? I don't understand that term in that context. With 38 participants, I discovered many things, including how our perspectives are shaped by our level of resiliency and insulating factors. Could you explain more what you meant by that? And I'd like to go into that a little more deeply about resilience, because I've heard many versions of that. The best version I've heard recently is the Paul McKenna one in the book that we were reviewing the other day. Okay, I'll tell you what it is that we've all been doing is breath. We hear about breath work, and Morihei Ueshiba, who founded Aikido, I quote, "Everything in heaven and earth breathes. Breath is the thread that ties creation together." Not read it, Neil. Dave, I suggest you do, actually. I think you would enjoy it. But basically, it talks about, and now we've got the science here to back it up, how our breath can raise endorphins, can raise dopamines, which makes little puffs of nitric oxide and all that sort of thing. And you can imagine people sitting around. He's got a chapter here called the Gospel of Gasp. These days, breathwork's having a bit of a moment. But he says breathing's something we all do. It's something we've always done from the moment we come into this world to the minute we leave it. Whether it comes down to spiritual, martial, or athletic language, breathing boils down to three things: oxygen, nitrogen, and CO2. Varying the rate, depth, and rhythm of our breath changes the ratios of these gases that makes up our atmosphere, which in turn affects how our minds and bodies perform. In other words, there's breath which you can use to calm down. There's breath where you can use to hype up and get more energy, what you need. Get high, if you like. Access alpha wave states in the brain with breath work, which are associated with inspiration, which was another part of what we've got on the screen here. That was ecstasis. Just by breath. Just by breath. So you don't have to take drugs. You don't have to drink. You don't have to do any of the things which you probably might do for, we've all got our favourites, for feeling better, you know, getting rid of the stresses of the day. But what if there was a way of doing it without the addiction, without the downside? This is what he's saying. It was a 3-year study. A quantitative study involves participants, whereas qualitative looks at past research. Thank you for that. And what was the result? If I understood this correctly, because some of this I can relate to me, how our perspectives are shaped by a level of resiliency and insulating factors. So as long as insulating factors, I would imagine, as long as we feel safe, we've got the headspace to operate well. But the minute we go into those, shall we say, lower states like fight or flight or something like that, or panic or anxiety, and most of it is based on circumstances. So it's either teaching people to have these Zen-like states, no matter the circumstances. And I'm not saying I've mastered that, because if circumstances are good, you're only as good as long as circumstances are. And then if something changes, it can feel like your whole life has been turned upside down. That's what happened to me a little while ago, and it's been quite the journey back, and I'm still on it. That's why I believe in being very honest with you when I come on here and do these things. Breath work is about connectivity, physical, emotional, and spiritual points. Do you know about breath work, Dave? Have you done any? I've actually got a session with a breath worker next week. I traded her, getting her podcast online, and she could teach me how to use my breath to get high. Embodiment is another thing, another chapter he talks about here. We've all become kind of like, hold on, like disembodied heads on sticks. And I've got a teacher who I go online and I learn from a fantastic guy. I'd love to get him on the show, called Nick Bro. And he talks about grounding endlessly. Get out your head and get in your body. He is the most balanced, in my opinion, balanced, grounded man I think I've ever met, or one of the few. Very honest, very authentic, and he creates these things. I've seen catharsis on his calls, where people heal and they look about 10 years younger. I've seen ecstasy and joy, but there's no drugs, there's no addiction, there's no cringe, there's no cult, there's no leader. And community, again, it's a real community with people that frankly love each other. You can see the love between the people because of the peership, because of even though we're on Zoom, we're all in different parts of the world, but we're all focused at the same time. And in that sense, we've all kind of got each other's backs and really feel a love for these people and want them to break through and all these sorts of things. I can't believe I'm saying all these things on the radio. Am I coming across as really fucking weird? But, you know, why not? I'm out the closet. Too late. But it is all these things. It's, you know, healing without the cringe, ecstasy without the addiction, community without the cult. And he does all these things. And it's got a real ring of truth for me. That's the only way. I can't prove it. It's not taught anywhere. If I went down my local church, they would probably think I've been studying some weird thing from around the world. I wouldn't get it in my local community church, probably. I probably wouldn't get it in my doctor's surgery. In scientific research, this has come from science, really. But I don't know. Anyway, embodiment, be more in your body, not in the head. He's actually set an alarm. He must be driving his partner mad. And it goes off every 3 minutes, to remind him to ground. It's that important. It's that important. And if anyone's studied any law of attraction, manifesting, grounding, all that sort of stuff, everything's done from a grounded state. You can't do it when you're up in your head. The mind will get in the way every single time. It's about being, not thought, if that makes sense. That's not to say thought is completely redundant. We obviously need to think, but it's put in its place. I think Einstein touched on it. He said, using the rational mind, it's a great servant, but we've made it into the master. I think that's the best way of saying it. And then another chapter, music. Now, this really did interest me. This really, really did interest me, as it would do. And he talks, you just have to read the book basically, but he talks about Live Aid. He talks about Queen on stage doing We Will Rock You, and the effect that had on all those people focused at the same time, the effect on their brain chemistry. And something I learned from this book, I've been DJing 30 years, and until I read this book, I didn't know this. Then he talks, I love this name of this chapter, By Their Beats Ye Shall Know Them. It's 128 beats per minute. 128 beats per minute, and all the DJs know this. That's what kicks the brain's neurotransmitters into action and puts us in flow state. So when you see dance floors in ecstasy and the DJ almost like this brilliant puppet master over it, that's what's going on. 128 beats per minute, 128 at the top 50 techno dance tracks. This guy did as a bit of research. What are they? 128. Trance DJs, they call it sonic driving. Okay. And it's basically when it's hooked up to high-tech sound systems and dazzling light shows, it's pretty powerful. And that could be ecstasis again. I know someone that goes to music festivals. It's a brilliant chapter. Rather than just sit here and read it all to you, get the book, read the chapter on music. It just talks. I mean, it's all about the icons that we know and the science behind what's going on behind these group events, what goes on in our brains when the DJ plays the right song, the magic of 128 beats per minute, how that can fire all 7 bliss chemicals at once. It's quite extraordinary. So let's go back to some of your comments. We did that one. Bravo Neil says, men's radio station. Thank you very much. Thank you for your comment. Karen says, not weird at all. Okay, thank you. Many years ago, it was seen as a myth from ancient nations. It is at the root of, is it how I manage extreme pain? What, breath work? Yeah, I can believe that it would be. Sounds difficult to put into practice. Well, if we're talking about breath work, not really. It's just breathing. You've been breathing pretty well ever since you came into this world. So what's difficult about just tweaking something that you do anyway? Be interested in your response to that. Karen says the power of music can be incredible. I know. And now the science, Karen, has caught up. If you read the chapter in that book. And then the next chapter is about sex, which has got some rather interesting points of view on that. And then the rest of the book is about how to, I suppose, build a community of people that are recapturing their own rapture without thinking they need to leave planet Earth to do it, if you know what I mean. So again, if you like, being grounded, but literally grounded on planet Earth rather than trying to get off into space and get the magical golden ticket to some future utopia, which no one's managed to achieve yet, by the way. Perhaps we have the answers. That's what I'm saying. David Neal says, Dr. Asa Don Brown, I've used breath work with my patients and those in my life. It's a critical aspect of life. Yeah. Poor breathing is associated with lowered cognitive functioning and an ability to make sound decisions. I use breathing in my work and in my own life. It's a way of being and living. Oh, Dr. Asa, that's why I'm so glad you are on the show, because I find it very reassuring when a professional, someone's got qualifications in this area and frankly knows what they're bloody talking about, can come on air and bear out these arguably crazy ass things that I'm talking about. I don't know. Hello, Kimmy. I spent ages learning to breathe when pregnant. When I went to labour, I couldn't breathe properly at all. Well, to be fair, that is quite a high pressure situation. We can all learn how to breathe properly, but if I fell off a cliff, it'd probably be quite hard to go, now remember the breathing exercises. Have I taken my vitamin C this morning? We go into those more extreme states of mind, don't we, Kimmy? So I can understand that. I'm not making light of it, but we do hear of people that have trained in breath and use it to manage pain, and even the pain of childbirth. I've heard the stories, not had experience for one very obvious reason. So yeah, Dr. Asa. Because good breath will keep you in good states, won't it? Good internal states. Because most of us breathe from our shoulders. We all sort of breathe like that. That's the worst breathing. What we want is the belly breathing, don't we? That deep, grounded, connected, Dave Sleep, connected, deep, grounded, connected. That's what we really need. That's the ultimate breath, isn't it? When people panic, that's an anxiety attack. That's bad breath. So it's not bad breath, but bad breathing. So I think there's something in this. Definitely. And if it's a simple solution to the chaotic world that we live in, and it's something as doable as that, for my money, that would be worth doing. That would be really, really worth doing. And then you don't really have to worry too much about what everyone else is doing, because you're the master of your own destiny. You're sovereign in that, I suppose. It's difficult, and I know and these are new ideas too. I mean, these things, I go back one generation when I was growing up, these things weren't talked about. Breathing was just something that you did. There was no science to it. Embodiment. Did you ever hear that term growing up? I didn't. Sex was basically, here's how it's done. Don't do it. Not exactly that bad, but a lot of us were taught that. Russ, I know you. Working on writing a new eulogy for a forthcoming funeral, but listening to this with great interest. Thank you, Neil. Always a great, stimulating listen. Best as ever, Russ. That's very, very kind of you. You can let us know, Neil. Let you know what, Kimmy. And I hope that writing the eulogy goes well. Definitely. So he comes up with something in this book called hedonic calendaring. So it's all about balance. If going to, I don't know, a rave, I'm not saying take drugs, but going to, I know someone, by the way, I go off at tangents, don't I? And she goes to raves and she's so high on her own brain chemistry and possibly all the beats and the 128 beats per minute and all that sort of thing. People come up and ask her who her dealer is. She hasn't got one. She's literally high on her own brain chemistry. So she's got the ecstasy in our example on the screen without the addiction. She's not taking any kind of drugs. What she's doing is completely healthy. This hedonic calendaring is building these, high dopamine, high serotonin things deliberately into your schedule, but not doing too much of it that you get addicted. It's all about the balance. It's all about the balance, isn't it? If I've had a really crappy day, a night at the pub where I have a few beers, this is a very bad example, might be exactly what my soul needed, but doing it every night probably wouldn't be what my body needed, even though the intentions behind it were good. Does that make sense? It's kind of that, isn't it? Breathing next week. Oh, well, I'm still breathing now. I can let you know now, Kimmy. I'm being facetious. Breathing next week. I'll let you know. Damn right, I'll let you know. I'll try and get her on the show. A poll, would something like this be useful if I could find experts to talk about these subjects who can talk about it much better than me? If I'm piquing an interest here, if you think this would be useful to you, comments in the chat window, please, and I will go hell for leather to try and find these people for you. We've got a wonderful lady called Jo Howarth coming up in a couple of weeks' time as well. She's all about happiness, and she's quite metaphysical as well. So let's see what Paul says. My dear friend Marnie is a yoga teacher and Buddhist. She's taught me some breathing and chanting techniques to de-stress and lower tension. Bottom line, it works and doesn't take long to master. You don't need to stop what you're doing. You breathe all the time, just alter how you breathe. Perfectly said, Paul. Couldn't have put that better myself, could I? That's absolutely perfect. And the thing is, we're at exciting times where, for example, you can measure it in the brain. So they were taking Buddhist monks and measuring what would happen if they were doing these meditations, or mindfulness as it probably would be in Buddhism, and then teaching that to everyone, because all it is a triggerable mechanism in the brain, and we all have that triggerable mechanism. Yes, there's some religious folks that would go, well, it's not from our tradition and it's wrong, therefore it's wrong. And with respect, I completely disagree with that. If it's a triggerable mechanism in the brain, then surely whatever created our brains, God, if you like, or universe or nature or whatever, intended us to have it. And so what's the point in having it and not using it? It doesn't matter where you get the wisdom from. I can't see Jesus and Buddha battling it out. Boy, that's my wisdom. No, it's not. It's mine. Well, I'm in charge. No, I'm not. You are. It's way above that sort of people's front of Judea psychology. It really is, in my opinion. Yeah. So Karen says, yes, please. Okay. Shall we start with the chapter on sex, or shall we get... I'll get to that. Dave Sleet, yes, you're right, sir. It's not new knowledge. It's ancient knowledge being rediscovered and reframed for a contemporary audience. Absolutely. Absolutely. But with a little more finesse, with a little more modernity. You know, we can set an app on our iPhone rather than watch the position of the sun, possibly. But yeah, it's a good. It's all good. It's all good. Me? No. Dr. Asa, it's about breathing from the diagram. It's a balance of breathing and thought. It's important to make it a daily routine and a regular aspect of one's life. We should use it in good times and bad ones. Yeah, there's proper and healthy breathing, and there is uncontrolled and poor breathing. You're absolutely right. I love this. I'm so enthralled with the conversation, I keep stopping to reply and post messages. That's what we do as presenters. We draw you in. We draw you in. But you're right. I mean, in the good times, it's tempting to think, oh, I don't need to do this. It's a bit like taking the first half of a course of antibiotics for something, thinking, I don't need to finish the course. Well, yeah, you do. And in the same way, you kind of need to keep doing it, even when it seems that you don't need to. Otherwise, you'll create even more situations where you need to, and it'll be a bigger jump to get back there. If you have a consistent, and if you do it consistently, it will become a default, because we are what we repeatedly do, aren't we? So if we deliberately sit down and do this breathing practice, which I'm going to do after this show, by the way, for 15 minutes a day, and make it a regular part of our day, we'll come to think, God, how could I have ever been without this? You know, we've all got access to these tools, and they're democratic. Everyone has access to these tools by dint of being human, and that's it. There's no favoritism here. The universe doesn't play favorites, as far as I can see. I don't believe it works that way. Thoughts? There's a chapter in Paul McKenna's book about connection, and that's really, really important. I think it's a human need to feel that we're connected to other human beings. I don't like the idea of having to do life all by myself, but I don't want to become dependent or needy or codependent on people, if that makes sense. And there's a real balance, isn't there, between knowing when to ask for help and receiving it, and becoming needy and dependent on people, isn't there? And that's a difficult one, because caring for people like that can be very, very hard when people are really, really needy. That's a really a difficult one. As I say, I'm not particularly the master of it, and I'll be the first to tell you that. I've got a chest infection at the moment, and when I phoned my wife, she thought it was a heavy breather on the line. She was disappointed when it was only me. Probably relieved that it was only you. Oh, Graham, you again. I know it's funny, mate, but if you're around, I think heavy breather would seem fairly tame. So we've had 45 minutes of discussing this. So what words can we take away from the conversation? Grounded, science-based, practical, self-care, all the stuff that we've talked about before, community, getting high, and I mean that in a non-drug way, getting high without the addiction, okay, or feeling good, if you like, catharsis, healing, community, all these things. And I found the need for these things at various times in my life. When I had my mental health dip about 4 years ago, it still comes up from time to time. I remember coining this phrase back in the day. It's less intense, less regular, and less long. And today I managed to think about all the things that would destroy me, the thoughts that would just bring me to a pile of nothing, but sensibly and somewhat objectively. And I thought, yeah, I'm going to write those down and discuss those with a friend later, see what they say about it and get their opinion on it, maybe get some reassurance on it or get some healing around it, rather than kind of it dominating me and taking me over, and frankly ruining my day. Paul, P.S. My friend Marnie had her moment of fame. Oh yeah, she developed doga, which is where your dog becomes part of the yoga session. I've never seen a collie with its paws behind its ears before. She took it to Britain's Got Talent, of course she did, and it was all going well until her dog Robbie peed over David Walliam's shoes. It's on YouTube if anyone fancies a laugh. There we go. Yeah, well, yoga kind of frees things up, and it might, free up bodily things which you may not want freed up. By the way, if you can see my T-shirt, it says this T-shirt was tested on animals, but it's just pictures of animals, various animals wearing the T-shirt. It's not, wasn't really tested on animals. Before we get the animal rights lot having a go at me. RVB, hello to you. So you would like some more on these subjects, would you? Because we can certainly do it, because I'm doing the Wednesdays now. I'm quite reassured that you don't think I'm that weird by discussing this, but you could argue that everything going on in the world at the moment is pretty freaking weird, and this would seem sensible. Was it doing Downward Dog at the time? Very good, Graham. Mr. E, my producer, I've been listening. I've discussions like this with Ken all the time. Actually, we discuss philosophical things of a philosophical bent. So come on, what do you think? I'll have a look around for some experts. Karen said yes, so I will try and get some. I'll certainly get a breathwork person on, because if you think about it, most things that we do is to get a certain feeling, isn't it? We want to feel a particular way, so we take actions to help us to feel that way. But sometimes in the nature of this busy world and all the distractions that we've got, that's kind of hard to keep up, isn't it? And if there were simple tools like just breath, where we could change how we feel quickly, wouldn't that be worth it? Facebook user, your Wednesdays have been informative and fascinating. Thank you very much. Is that you again, Kimmy? You say the nicest things. Dr. Asa Don Brown, we're a social species, we are, and it's our community that acts as a support and a source of encouragement. Yet it's important that we love ourselves first, and then we know how to love others. Because if we don't know how to love ourselves, then we won't know how to love another. And that's true. And also, I think community is so important, But again, it's a balance, because we don't want to get so far into our communities that we think the other communities are the bad guys, if you know what I mean. And then sort of communities can start battling up against each other, which we don't want. You know, it's about having your own community, I suppose, respecting other people's and getting on well with other people's community. A perfect example, I'm friends with quite a few Jewish people, and I'm not going to integrate into that community because I'm not Jewish. It's not meaningful to me. I wasn't brought up that way. I'm not Jewish. I never will be. But that doesn't mean I dislike Jewish people, and it doesn't mean to say that I want their communities to be disrupted in any way. It means none of that. And I'll be perfectly lovely when we meet, and we are, you know, and we're friends and all that sort of thing. But I've still got my own community, and I wouldn't seek solace in that context from that community, because it wouldn't work for me, because I don't have the background. But it's about allowing other people's communities, isn't it? Yes, it's Kimmy. I seem to have lost my face. Kimmy, don't do that. Ken says, worth looking for martial arts and similar. Well, we did quote the founder of Aikido on the show earlier on. And for any of us that are metaphysically minded, they say the breath is the closest thing to our connection to whatever word you want to use here, because I know they're all loaded words: universe, source, spirit, God, whatever you want to call it. It doesn't matter. I don't care if you call it the fairies at the bottom of the garden, something greater, our grand future, our higher potential, mother wave. I've heard them all. But they say that our breath is the closest thing to that. And it's actually the root of the same word. In inspired, the etymology is spiritus. So to be inspired is to be in spirit, which is inspiration, which comes down to ecstasis, inspiration, right? And if we can access that just by breathing, wouldn't that be worth it? Comment from Russ Kane. Who is that? Social media was intended to create communities, but it has caused so much division and hatred. Yeah, I think it's a question of taking the matches away from the children, isn't it, Russ? Because a lot of the time it's used as anti-social media. It's just another way that human beings are found to be vile to each other. People that have a very low level of being informed and a very high level of being entitled and thinking they're entitled to shout their misinformed opinions, unfortunately. And like certain tabloid media, social media can be used to wind people up, to influence, to create division and hatred. Used in its proper way, as we're using it here, this is a kind of social media. You know, we're broadcasting live. It's a live radio show. But this is social media, not anti-social media. And the difference is massive, isn't it? But you're right, Russ, it has caused division and no, do you know, I'd argue with that. I would say it's human beings that have caused division and hatred, and they're just using social media to do it now. It's just a new way they found. Division and hatred was always there. Social media just became a convenient way to do it, if you know what I mean. I don't think we can blame social media for division and hatred any more than we can blame Henry Ford for car accidents. It's not the tool, it's what we do with it that counts. My social media rule is, if I wouldn't say it to your face, I wouldn't say it online. And just because I'm sitting here in my home talking to you rather than in a studio, I still consider a level of professional respect. I wouldn't say anything hateful or disrespectful, or call anyone out, or embarrass someone just because I'm behind a computer screen rather than face to face. This counts. To me, this is real radio and needs treating with the same respect. Karen says, we discussed box breathing in one of our groups at work to help us press pause for a few moments. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's all about those little pauses throughout the day. My mentor, Nick Bro, he talks about, told you this on the show earlier, he talks about setting an alarm for 3 minutes. Grounding every 3 minutes. Every 3 minutes. That's the importance of grounding, right? If my mentor, okay, who's been doing this years, needs to remind himself time to time to ground every 3 minutes, could there not be something in this? Could it maybe be a little bit important? Maybe grounding, just saying a little tiny tad. You know, can't imagine what his partner's thinking. That must be driving her absolutely mad. Ken, I'll teach you the technique. I'll teach you a technique later. Thank you. Well, actually, plenty of techniques in here. This is the book we've been reviewing, Recapture the Rapture, Rethinking God, Sex and Death in a World That's Lost Its Mind. It's quite heavy, not heavy, it's kind of, well, it's stuff we already know. Yeah, there's a lot of bad shit going on at the moment, but it does provide practical solutions for the individual. And if there's enough of us doing practical solutions and getting the community and self-love and connection we need, that will spread out like a ripple effect where we can respect other people doing the same. And then who knows, maybe us humans will rise up in a good way and collaborate and create a better world. Who knows? And if it all started with breathing better, well, I guess I'd be up for that. Today, tomorrow I'll probably think the world's a horrible place and I want to stay in bed again, because we can all have. Oh, you like that? Taking the matches away from the children. A genius comment. Thank you, Russ. Thank you. It's like being heckled, but in a positive way. You don't often get that, do you? You never get that comedy, do you? Like heckle. You're really good. Get on. Stay on. Do more. It's always the negative, isn't it? Thank you, Russ. Thank you for that. Speaking of Russ, you will see his face on Friday with Phil Dave. And I'll be back on Monday, and I'll be back next Wednesday. Just have a look if we've got a guest next Wednesday. I might try and get a breathy work type person. We've got Joe Howarth in 2 weeks' time. No guest for next Wednesday so far, so I might see if I can get a breath person. Yeah, this is true, Asa Don Brown, and you've kind of blended science and spirituality here. I won't say religion because I find it divisive, but spirituality isn't. If I truly love thyself, I think he means myself, then I can do no harm unto another. For unconditional love looks beyond all aspects of the human condition and sees another as acceptable, lovable, and worthy. Yeah, well, there's no arguing with that, really, is there? And it's not easy when they're in your face. Sometimes I don't think that negates the necessity for boundaries, certainly, but I suppose if I truly love myself, I wouldn't be putting myself in a situation where others could treat me that way, no matter what their issues were. Maybe getting a bit philosophical now. Let's read that again. If I truly love myself, I assume that's what you mean, I can do no harm unto another. Well, that's true, because happy, balanced people, has anyone noticed, don't go around doing people harm. Happy people don't stab people. Happy people, it just doesn't happen. Happy people generally be more connected to a community, or be more connected to the world in general, connected to something good, shall we say. And again, with that fulfillment, would be less happy. Why would you do anything to destroy this good thing that you have? Maybe we need to appreciate more of the good things that are all around us all the time, which there are, if I care to look. But if I'm spending all of my time worrying or freaking out or being angry with people, even if it's justified, I probably won't notice, and my bandwidth goes over in that direction, and I can miss the bleeding obvious. I just want to say RIP to Robin Windsor. 44 is way too young to go, very much so. I'm seeing Michael McIntyre tomorrow at a small work in progress show. Shout out a positive heckle at him. No, because he'll nick that and build it into his show, and I want that. I thought of that. Facebook user, suffer from depression at times, so tragic. He was lovely. Yeah, and that's the nihilism that we were talking about earlier on the show. It's so maybe the more conversations we have like this, the more tools that we put out there, the less of these horrible statistics that we'll have to keep talking about, saying, "Oh, isn't it terrible? Isn't it awful?" without really knowing what to do about it. And maybe it, even in a small way, starts with us. I sound like Jerry Springer finishing a show now. So for the rest of the day, be lovely to yourself and to each other as best you can. Reach out to me on Facebook if you want to chat. I'm always happy to talk to any of our usual suspects here. Russ and Phil, we'll see you Friday. And thank you very much. Thank you, Julie. Thank you very much. Hope you've enjoyed the show. Love you, hug you, squeeze you. Take care. Bye-bye.